from emperors, pharaohs, and kings.
God has been always through the ages speaking to people through dreams and visions.
To scientists, musicians, and even children.
I've had this dream before. Saw it happened a couple weeks ago. I've had this dream before.
See the dreams that changed history and learn what to do when God speaks to you.
Whether you've received a dream or a vision, that's only part of it.
Welcome to this special program, Visions of the Night. Tonight, when you go to sleep, you'll have an average of 4 dreams, whether you remember them or not. You may dream about flying, falling, failing a test, or even showing up to work in your pajamas. So what do your dreams mean? Are they caused by stress or a late night snack? Or is God trying to tell you something? In the Bible, God often used dreams to warn people about bad choices or coming disasters. Sometimes He spoke directly, and other times the dreamers needed someone else to help them interpret. In ancient Egypt, a pharaoh was plagued by nightmares. So he sent for a Hebrew prisoner named Joseph.
I have had a dream, and there's no one who can interpret it. But I have heard it said of you that you can understand a dream to interpret it.
It is not in me. God will give Pharaoh an answer of peace.
In my dream, I stood on the bank of the river.
Pharaoh shared his first dream of the 7 fat cows, eaten by the 7 thin cows. Then the second dream, about the 7 good heads of grain, devoured by 7 withered heads.
I told this to the magicians, but there was no one who could explain it to me.
The dreams of Pharaoh are one. God has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do.
Then Joseph interpreted Pharaoh's dream. 7 years of plenty for Egypt, followed by 7 years of famine. Joseph's interpretation got him promoted to Pharaoh's second in command and saved an entire nation.
Whether you've received a dream or a vision, that's only part of it. Interpreting it and applying it is really where the growth comes.
Throughout the Bible, God sent messages in dreams. For some, those messages were warnings.
Not every dream is from the Lord, and neither is every nightmare from the devil.
After the fall of Sodom and Gomorrah, Abraham and his family moved south through the Negev desert. For a time, they lived in the Philistine city of Gerar, and while they were there, Abraham's wife Sarah caught the eye of the king, Abimelech. Abraham, fearing for his life, introduced her as his sister, so the king took Sarah to be part of his harem. But that night, Abimelech got more than he bargained for.
Abimelech, you are a dead man, for that woman you have taken is already married.
Now, this is not a good dream. When God shows up in your dream and says, I'm going to kill you, I think this qualifies as a nightmare. And I love what it says. It says, very early the next morning he got up and he took Sarah back to Abraham. And he loaded them up with riches and jewels and said, please leave my country.
"2,000 years later, wise men followed a star, looking for the newborn king of the Jews. Their search led them to King Herod in Jerusalem. Herod was angered by their news about the birth of a new king. And after the meeting, God warned the wise men in a dream not to return to the king. He also warned Joseph to take the child to Egypt. Both dreams saved Jesus' life and kept him from being slaughtered by Herod. At the end of Jesus' life, God sent another warning dream, this time to a Roman.
No!
The dream came to the wife of Pontius Pilate, the Roman governor who tried Jesus. As Pilate considered whether or not to execute Jesus, his wife sent him a message.
Go quickly. Deliver this to my husband.
Have nothing to do with that just man, for I have suffered many things in a dream because of him.
Pilate tried to release Jesus, but ultimately he gave in to the crowds of Jerusalem. Then he washed his hands and delivered Jesus to be crucified. That was a warning dream. And Elihu talked to Job. Elihu was a friend of Job, and he told Job that surely God had warned him because he listed out that these things come in dreams, that God speaks in the visions of the night. You find it in the 33rd chapter of Job. In Job, Elihu never got an answer directly from Job of whether or not Job had a dream warning him that these things were coming and warning him that these were consequences for his actions, because God stepped in and interceded on behalf of Job with Job's friends. Now, the question for us today is, God's still speaking in dreams. We have plenty of examples from the Bible, but are there examples from today? Are there examples from history? And what about the promise of the prophet Joel, that he would pour out his Spirit? These are the promises of God. He would pour out his Spirit on all flesh. Your young men shall see visions. Your old men shall dream dreams. For almost 300 years after Jesus' death, his followers endured great persecution throughout the Roman Empire. Then suddenly, the tide turned, and Christianity became the official religion of Rome. It all started with an emperor who said a prayer and had a vision that changed history. Once the greatest power on earth, Rome in the 4th century was on the brink of collapse.
Well, put it this way, 20 out of the 22 emperors were assassinated. So it was a terrible topsy-turvy time.
2 co-emperors fought for control, Constantine in Great Britain and Maxentius in Rome. The empire was ravaged by war, poverty, and the persecution of Christians, the bloodiest in history.
When Christians are under duress, they certainly stand up for the faith magnificently with God's help. And the result is quite dramatic.
And Christians in Rome were about to find a champion in Constantine.
There is no question, but he felt, believe it or not, called by God to Christianize the Roman Empire.
Constantine decided the time had come to overthrow Maxentius, the man he called a pagan and a tyrant. The year was 312.
Maxentius is probably the incarnation of everything evil. He was a terrible, terrible emperor. He consulted witches and wizards regularly. He liked to augur the future by various foul means. One included, this is hard to believe, ripping open the bellies of pregnant women and checking out the fetuses' livers for clues as to tomorrow. Horrible things.
Constantine's army battled through Europe, defeating the forces of Maxentius. On October 27th, they were poised to invade the city of Rome. Constantine camped here, 9 miles north of Rome. His army was outnumbered 4 to 1. So he prayed to God for help. And here in this field, he had a vision that changed the course of history. Around noon, Constantine looked up at the sky and saw a sign above the sun. The symbol was a cross formed by the Greek letters chi and rho, the first 2 letters in the name of Christ. Above the sign were the words, "Conquer by this." That night, the strange sign appeared again. Constantine said that in his sleep, the Christ of God appeared to him and instructed him to use the sign as a standard in battle. The next morning, Constantine ordered his soldiers to mark the symbol on their shields, and under the sign of the cross, they headed for Rome. On the other side of the Tiber River, Maxentius sent his troops to meet Constantine, while he stayed behind in Rome. October 28th marked the 6th anniversary of the reign of Maxentius. To celebrate, he held a day of public games here at the Circus Maximus. But instead of cheering, the crowds turned on him. They shouted, "Constantine cannot be overcome." So Maxentius fled to the temple of Apollo. There he searched a collection of pagan prophecies, known as the Sibylline books, and found a passage that mentioned the date, October 28th. On the same day, the enemy of the Romans should perish. Maxentius thought it prophesied the death of Constantine, so he changed his mind and went to join his troops. But by now, his army was trapped between Constantine and the Tiber River. The only way back into Rome was across the Milvian Bridge, and here Maxentius fell headfirst into the trap he had set for Constantine. Maxentius had cut all the bridges into Rome, but at the Milvian, he had built a temporary wooden bridge designed to collapse under the weight of Constantine's army. Instead, most of his own soldiers were trapped on the bridge. When it collapsed, many of them drowned, and the rest were taken prisoner. Maxentius himself drowned after jumping into the river. And the next day, Constantine's army entered Rome, parading his head on the point of a spear. Today, Constantine is known as the first Christian emperor. But was it a real conversion, or just a smart political move?
There may have been political benefits for Constantine to do that. I've never understood why he must be only a totally sincere Christian convert or only a calculating politician. There could have been a little of both involved.
As emperor, Constantine remained the head of Rome's pagan priesthood, and his coins bore the image of the Roman sun god, Sol Invictus. He also declared a national day of rest on the Roman Day of the Sun.
There's no question that Constantine was somewhat of a mixed Christian when it came to controlling the empire. He said, look, we're in a transition period. Please understand that I am emperor of all of the Romans, including the pagan Romans, so give me a little time and we'll phase these out. And he did.
The true extent of Constantine's conversion is debatable, but his influence on Christianity is undeniable. Within a year, he and his co-emperor issued an edict of toleration. They granted permission for all religions to worship freely and ordered the return of property seized from persecuted Christians.
This was a dramatic move. When Constantine was converted, it was at a time when only 10% of the Roman Empire was Christian. At the end of the 300s, 95% of Rome was Christian.
Less than 400 years after the death of Christ, his followers had become the most influential religious group in Rome. And with this sign, Christianity had conquered the Roman Empire. Constantine's dream changed the course of an empire. And throughout history, Artists, athletes, and inventors have been inspired in their sleep. That inspiration came regardless of religious belief, and even when there was no belief in God at all. In 1965, the Beatles were in London filming the movie Help. One night in a dream, Paul McCartney heard a string ensemble playing a new melody. He woke up and went to the piano to recreate the music he heard in his dream. That melody later became the Beatles' hit Yesterday, one of the most covered songs in music history. In 1964, pro golfer Jack Nicklaus was having a bad slump and routinely shooting in the high 70s. Then suddenly, his game improved. And here's how he explained his overnight success. I had a dream, and it was about my golf swing. I was hitting them pretty good in the dream, and all at once I realized I wasn't holding the club the way I've actually been holding it lately. I was doing it perfectly in my sleep. So when I came to the course yesterday morning, I tried it the way I did in my dream, and it worked. In 1841, a factory worker named Elias Howe had an idea. He wanted to invent a modern sewing machine. He worked on the model for 5 years, but couldn't get the needle to work. Then one night, he had a dream that changed his life. He dreamed that he was in a strange country, surrounded by natives who were about to kill him. In the dream, he noticed that the natives carried spears with holes in the heads. And even in his dream, he realized that this was the solution to his problem, putting the eye in the point of the needle instead of the base. At 4 a.m., he woke up and went to his workshop. And by 9 o'clock, he had finished a new working model of the machine. Many scientific discoveries came as